Hello and welcome to another episode of Just Roll With It Reviews, where today Sam and I are going to be continuing our top 100 for 2022. This is the second video, so this will be 90 through 81, and we'll be alternating, starting with Sam. Yeah, let's get on with it.
So the first one for this video is number 90, and for me this is Galaxy Trucker. So this game is a little bit of just generally kind of a random game. You're basically going to have a pool of tiles out in the middle of the table, and the first portion of the game, like basically the first half of it, is just looking at tiles and going, do I want this or not? And there's like a variety of tiles, and there's like different levels of tiles, kind of like giving you weapons and energy and like engines, I think. So things like that, and you're just deciding whether you want them or not, and then you're putting them onto your ship, which is like a little mat that you basically have in front of you with spaces on it, and then the second half of the game is going around a track, basically, and like moving your ship around, and then it plays, basically, and then it plays in like 3 rounds, I believe, with like different sizes of ships, doesn't it? If I'm remembering right. Or is it just
maybe
difficulty? I don't remember.
I think you just choose which template you're using, because there's like a Star Trek one where it's like the Enterprise.
That's right. Yeah. Okay.
I think you just choose that you all use the same template. I think it's still just the first half is like real time building your ship as quickly as you can, and then once the timer runs out, then you do the roundel going around, and random things happen to your ship, and pieces fall off, and aliens destroy it, and you. I think just have to make it to the end with like one guy in a cockpit, because that's the other thing is when you build your ship, there's tiles that are cockpits, and then when you start, you can actually like put crew members in them, and then as pieces fall off, you might lose one cockpit, but as long as you have like one pilot at the very end, I think you win. I think is how it works.
And this one just like it's a little bit lower on the list just because of the fact that it's random, but I still enjoy it nonetheless, and I think it's a good game for what it is as a random game, I think.
Yeah, this one did not make my list. It was on the like honorable mentions or whatever. I'd like to play it again. I didn't dislike it. I definitely like the first half of the game more than the second half. I wish that there was a little bit more luck mitigation than I remember there being. Because the first part where you're building basically just like a spaceship out of junk is fun, and all the different tiles do different things. Like like you said, like you have batteries to charge your lasers. You have, different types of weapons. You have like missiles and things. You have engines and cockpits, and I think there's even like some sort of like alien thing that you can add. There's all sorts of things that you can add to your ship, and they all do different things. But yeah, that second half of the game where you're basically just flipping cards and bad things are happening to your ship, and you're basically just hoping to get lucky with the way that you configured your ship to make it to the end of the race. It's not bad. It's just like it's definitely like I think the problem is that it's like almost too long for like a party game. I think that's why like there's not even necessarily too long. There's too much rules overhead because it's a Vlada game, and it's pretty light as Vlada games go. But even then, like each of the pieces basically does different things, and you can only have a certain number of certain ones, and so there's a lot of rules like that like I'd have to reread the rules and stuff. But I would like to play it again. It could maybe make its way up the list. But yeah, my number 90 is Spectre Ops. Which is a 1v all type of game. It's a hidden movement game, so basically one player is the like infiltrator. It's kind of got like a cyberpunk future theme, and one of you is like the person trying to break in and steal some things, and the other players are basically defending that. And you got this big board with all these little squares on it, and the like infiltrator character, the one that's hidden, is moving around and trying to get to various goals around the board without being detected, and basic hidden movement stuff. It's nice and light. That's the one thing I really like about it. Something like Fury of Dracula did not make it on this list because it's too heavy. I kind of like that Spectre Ops is a lot lighter. and easier to play, and everyone gets like their own unique abilities because that's so that you actually have something to contribute. Whereas like so it's a little bit harder to get like alpha gamer than something like Pandemic where everyone's basically the same. This one like you actually have like I think almost all of them are single use too. Most of your abilities are. I know for sure like the hidden movement character is all like basically they have really powerful cards that allow them to break the rules of movement, but they can only be used once, and so they'll like flip them over to indicate they've been used, but the other team that's trying to find you doesn't know what they were. So anyway, you have to go in, you have to do a variety of it's like basically different computer terminals that you have to like do things at around the board, and then you have to get out without getting detected. Super fun. I'd like to play it again. We played it with my parents, and that went surprisingly well. So, yeah, it could move up, but also it's it's pretty simple. There are probably better hidden movement games out there, but it needed to make the list. So,
I don't know exactly what I ended up putting on my list, but I definitely would want to play it again, I guess, before like.
I liked it quite a bit for what it was.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I liked that it was a lot lighter, while still doing the hidden movement thing well. Like that is what it is. It's a hidden movement game. There's no like bells and whistles. It's like pretty straightforward.
And like I think I'd really like it, but like I guess the question is just like with another playthrough mostly, just like doing different things and like
It's
different
hard.
characters too, especially.
I was the hidden man.
Yes.
And I didn't make it out. I almost got away with it. I did not though. But yeah, that is my number 90.
So number 89 for me is Silver and Gold.
Ooh. Mine's close. Mine's within
Alright.
this set. So
So Silver and Gold is a game. It's basically entirely cards. It is entirely cards. With dry
And
erase
markers.
Yes, with dry erase markers. And basically what you're doing is there's a deck of islands that you have set up, and then there's a deck of, I forget, like 10? Is it 10 even? I don't know. Anyway, there's a deck of shapes, basically.
7, I think it is.
Is it 7?
it's not a lot.
Yeah.
It's less than 10.
Yeah, it
I think
is
it's
less
like
than
6.
10.
I think it's
remember.
7. No, it's 8 and you flip 7. I think that's
Yeah,
what it
okay,
is.
yeah.
Because
So
Bradley
you can flip
corrected
one
me
of
in
them.
another video.
Yeah.
I think it's 8 and you only flip 7 of them.
So there's a deck of shapes, and they're just like boxes, basically, because even the islands themselves are all made up of boxes. So the shapes are in boxes, so like a small L, large L, things like that. And basically the entire game is you'll have 2 islands always in front of you that you're working on, and the one player will be drawing the cards, and you basically just try to put the shape on the island. And then complete an island, and there will be different like things like symbols on them. So there's like gold coins that you can stack up to get points, and there's palm trees that like give you points based off of what's in like the
Islands that other people
yeah,
can
the
choose
other
when
islands,
they finish their islands.
because I think there's like 3 islands basically,
3 or 4.
and whatever palm trees are in there, you can score points based off of when you cover the palm tree on your island, and there's X's that let you cross off other spaces, and yeah, you're just trying to complete islands, and those give you points as well, and then it goes through, I believe, 3 rounds of drawing all the cards. I think it's pretty short. Is it 4?
It's
4
4.
rounds? Yeah, it is 4.
4 rounds, yeah.
I'm going through all the
Because
cards.
I almost always
except
play
one.
it with 3 players, and the first person always gets to be like the first player twice. So memory.
And yeah, and then you total it up at the end.
Yeah, it's a very simple flip and right, like you're drawing polyomino shapes. Basically, you're filling in polyomino shapes to just as efficiently as possible score points. Like I said, this one will be coming up in like 2 or 3, I think. I know there's like 1.5 billion flip and rights. I've pretty much only played this one. It's not like a genre I'm huge into, but this is a very good and very easy to teach party game. I like it a lot for that. Mm-hmm. There's enough depth that it's interesting to play, and there's enough simplicity that it's very easy to teach people who have no idea how to play board games. And you go, and usually people, when you go, you get to write on cards, they're like, sweet. So that's fun too. It's always fun to write on cards. The reason that it's lower for me is just because of the coins. You cannot let someone run away with the coins. If anyone has ever played the game before, and you let one person basically just get almost all of the coin, because for every, I think it's 4 coins you get a trophy. And the trophies start from 6 points, and they go down to 1 point, so it's like 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And so when somebody gets the first 4 coins, they check off the number 6 trophy, the highest numbered one that's available. And then when they get the next one, they check off the next highest number one that's available. So if you let one person get like the first 2 trophies, there's pretty much no way you can win the game. Or anyone else can win the game. So the one thing I would say that I always have to like teach when I teach it is, don't let somebody just take all the coins. You have to at least take a couple of the trophies, because if you let somebody just run away with the coins, they will win the game, because they're a little good.
Yeah. And that with the palm trees being kind of weird, and like, yes, they give you a couple extra points, but then it's like,
see, I wish the coins were a little bit more like palm trees, because the palm trees work pretty well,
like somewhere in between, or
because the way
they both end up being
palm trees work is like you said. There's the like. Like Sam said, you have 2 available ones that you're working on at any given time, and then when you finish one, you get to take a new one from the set of 3 or 4 that are out. But those are what determine how many points you get for palm trees. So when you cross off a palm tree, you get 1 for the one you crossed off, and then you count up each of the other ones that's on that available supply. And I think I don't think there's any cards that have 2 palm trees. Everything has 1 or 0 palm trees, and most things have 0.
So it's basically a maximum of 4.
So you actually have to time it. Like, that's a decision you make in the game to when to cross off your palm tree. You watch what comes out on that row, and if you get like 3 or 4, cross it off, and you just got a decent amount of points. But for the most part, you're not going to be getting like 2 or 3 points maybe for your palm trees. And that one makes it's a little bit more like there's a decision, whereas the coins is just grab all the coins and just cross them off as fast as you can.
And you even get points for the coins themselves, because you have 4 coins.
I should have added. It's not just the trophy. So you get the coins, you get the points for the trophy, whatever trophy you crossed off. You write that on your card, but you also at the end of the game get 1 point for every coin that you crossed off. Meaning, when you cross off the first 4 coins and then cross off the 6th trophy, if you're the first person to get a trophy, that's 10 points just for coins. At the very beginning of the game, that's the first trophy somebody claims. So that's where it gets out of control, is each of them. I wish that the coins like you check off to get the trophies maybe were worth less, because I think that would maybe fix it. Because I guess the trophies themselves aren't the problem. It's just that you get so many points from coins, just going for coins. Yeah. So, but it's a very fun game. Like I said, I know there's like 1.5 billion flipping rights. I really like this one. It's a very good, nice travel game, and you get to draw on cards. So, did I completely forget what mine is? No, I did not. Mine, I mean, I did for a second. My 89 is Treasure Island. This one, as with a lot of them, could move up. We have not played it a lot. There are some slight issues with it, but I think it's really fun. Treasure Island is basically a 1 versus all game where one player plays as Long John Silver from Treasure Island, and the other players play as pirates who are all trying to get to Long John Silver's treasure before Long John Silver can. So Long John Silver starts the game, and he's imprisoned, and he has chosen a space on this big old map of the island where his treasure is buried that only he can see. So you have a little screen, Long John Silver chooses where his treasure is, and then all the other pirates are going to be taking their turns and moving along the board using dry erase markers, a lot of dry erase markers in this game, and searching small areas on this board. They can search these like circles on the board to try to find it. And while Long John Silver is in prison, so like every round, he has to give a clue he gets like a hand of clues basically, and he has to choose one of those. He doesn't want to choose any of them, but usually try to choose the one that's least harmful to you, that gives the least amount of helpful information to the other players, and then he puts a token on it, whether or not it's true or false. So he gets, 2 false tokens?
Yeah, I think over the...
Basically almost all of them. I think it's like 6 out of 8 have to be true, something like that. And then you can have 2 tokens that you can have be false, where whatever the card says is just not true. It's blatantly false. But for the most part, you have to give up a lot of information. Once you do that for, I think it's like 6 or 8 rounds, something like that. It depends on the player count too. So, then Long John Silver gets to break out of prison once he's served his time, and he then is trying to get to his treasure before everybody else. So you can then follow where Long John Silver is going, the other players can, and try to get there first. It's very fun. I like it a lot. I know it's pretty low on the list, but it's on the list, so Galaxy Trucker didn't make it on the list. Like I said, I think this one could move up. One thing I will say is with the components, and I don't know how they would have done this better, with the dry erase stuff, it can be hard to see things. It can get really cluttered when a lot of people are searching the same area. And some of the components, like, they're not bad production quality, but, like, I feel like they'll wear out over time. Like, it's really cool. They have, like regular sized versions, and then they have smaller versions for you to use on behind your screen for your own personal, which is cool. But like some of them are already kind of cracking, and then we did get it used. And then there's the what is that thing called? The circle drawer.
Yeah.
What is that called? It's not a sextant, is it? No. Sextant's for like charting the night sky.
Yeah.
I don't know. Whatever the thing is where you put the one, it's like an A shape, and you put the one end down, and that's your anchor point, and then you draw a big circle. That thing, kind of flimsy, doesn't really work. We always have to futz with it. It's always kind of a pain. It's cool that it's included for drawing circles, because I can't draw circles to save my life, but it's a little shoddy. Yeah, I don't know if you have anything to say about
Mine is actually also in this set of 10, so...
We had a couple almost crossovers, I guess.
Yeah.
I'll consider anything within a block of 10 a crossover. But, you have anything? Oh, I guess you can say when we get to it.
Yeah, I guess.
That's up to you. Yeah.
Alright, so next up we've got number 88. So this one on my list is Element. This is generally a pretty simple game. Yeah, you recently purchased this.
Recently purchased.
Bradley got it before that, and
I
we
don't
played
know
it
if this
with
is
him.
on my list, actually.
Yeah, so this is generally a pretty simple game. Basically, it's just a bag of different colored tokens. Like there's 4, because it's air, water,
It's
fire,
the basic
and earth. Yeah.
4 elements. It's the avatar element.
And there's basically just a big old grid of, like, just a grid. It's not really even that, like, there's not much on the board. It's literally just a grid, pretty much, with, like, a coloring. And then you can play with, like, a number of players. Either way, if you play with, like, 4 people, I think we played with 4 people.
You go up to
You've
4.
got, like, your 4, yeah. Your 4 totems that you, like, represent you.
They're monks.
Yes.
Monks.
And, basically, you're just drawing tokens out of the bag, and they each have a different effect. So, like, the black ones, the earth, are mountains, and, like, you can build mountain ranges so that it, like, blocks people from going diagonally through them.
They can't jump over me there. I think.
Yeah.
Well, it's when there's 2, and, like,
Yeah,
it has to be a
the
certain
2
size, and, like, when
size.
there's 2, like, tokens stacked on top of each other,
Yeah.
you can't, like, jump over it. Sorry.
Yeah. And then, so then, speaking of jumping over, the air ones, basically, if you have them diagonally too, you can, like, jump over tiles, basically, with those. And the fire... What does the fire do? That one's like...
Fire spreads. I can't
Yeah.
remember how it works, though, because I know the water is when you place one on
Yeah,
it, the
you
whole
move
chain moves. I can't remember what water is.
Yeah.
Or fire, I mean. Sorry. It's like water, but
Is it
hot.
just, like, block? No.
No, I don't remember what it does. Either way, all the elements have specific pieces that they do.
And
so
that's basically the whole game, is you're just drawing tokens, and you're basically kind of generally trying to even, like, get sections of things. And the goal of the game is it the player to your right
it's
or left?
Yeah.
One of them.
It doesn't matter. It's one of the players.
You're trying to entirely surround them with pieces so that they can't move during their turn.
Yep. You don't have to surround everybody because that would be like impossible
Yeah.
in this game. Yep. You just have to surround your opponent if you play with more than obviously 2 people. It's just your opponent. But with like 3 or more, I think it's like the person to your left or something like clockwise.
something.
And the first person to do that wins.
Yeah.
And like I said, there's all sorts of different ways to like stack the tokens and move them around. I think you draw like 3 or something out of the bag, and you choose one. Or I don't remember how it works, but I know if it's like the same color, you can place them all.
Yeah.
So you can get like mountain ranges and things like Sam was saying to block people in. Fire may block you from jumping too. I can't remember.
If I did something.
Either way, it's definitely an abstract like puzzle game.
Yeah.
But I like how simple it is, because you basically all you need to know is what the different things do.
Yeah.
And that's the whole game.
4 of them, and they're
And then
generally
you're just,
pretty simple.
You're just drawing them, and you're just trying to trap your opponent. You're trying to prevent them from being able to make a legal move.
Yeah.
And it's fun. This has got to be on my list somewhere. I'm pretty sure it is, but now I can't remember where. But it's definitely like one of my favorite abstract games. It does very good. Don't buy the old version. It is ugly as sin. Maybe I'll throw a picture up when I edit the video. But the old cover, the components are probably fine. But wow, the cover is ugly. It's like super busy, and they have like the whole description of the game on the front cover, and it looks just like it was done in MS Paint. It looks so bad. But the new version by Rather Dashing Games looks very nice and clean and professional. So that's all I gotta say about that. Another random Bradley buy. Bradley got this one at Gen Con. It's a fun fact for you there. Because he actually bought interesting games at Gen Con. You good? Yeah. All right. My number 88 is Unmatched. And I already feel like this one should maybe be higher. I need to play it again. But I'm pretty happy with it down here. It's a very light game, but basically, if you don't know, Unmatched is basically, it's very similar to like Dice Throne. By the way, I did not include Dice Throne because I feel like these games are so similar. I know one's a dice game and one's not, so this may just be a me thing. This is bordering on like weird Don territory of they're the same game. They're very similar games. I like Unmatched more, but this could have been Dice Throne. So like if you want it to be Dice Throne, it's Dice Throne, and if you want it to be Unmatched, it's Unmatched. So I ran out of spots in my list and things had to go. I condensed a lot of things, because I think I did that with Pandemic, too. Pandemic was Atlantis Rising, Horrified, and Pandemic, and I chose Pandemic because, like, it's a classic. Anyway, I digress. Unmatched is a game where 2 to 4 players are going to basically be playing as historical figures. There's also a Marvel one, but I don't care about that. So they're going to be, like, you know, royalty-free, like, literature characters for the most part. So you have, like, Sherlock Holmes, blanking on names, The Invisible Man, King Arthur, different literary characters, and each one has a pre-made, I think it's 30 card deck that's unique to them, and tailored to like how that character would operate. And then some of them have sidekicks, some of them don't, but like Sherlock has Watson. Other people have other things. Dracula has the brides or the sisters or whatever they're called. And you're basically going to be battling to the death. So you'll be on this little board, and you'll have your deck of cards, and you take turns taking actions, and your actions are basically like, you can move, and the only way to draw cards is to move. Well, you don't have to actually move, but you have to take the action to move. No, you have to move, you don't have to draw a card. That's what it is. So there's like one of your actions is you can move, and then when you move, you can draw a card, which is very important because cards are kind of your life, and it also, that's the only way you draw them. So you don't just draw a card like every round, like a lot of games will just be like, draw back up to your hand of 5 cards. Nope, you have to move, then you get a card. And you have to do that as your action for the turn, so you're really not being able to do, or you do 2 actions, but you can't do as much stuff because you moved. You can attack, which is basically you play one of your cards, and the cards are either like attack cards, defense cards, I think they're called like plots.
The plots. And then there's like the combo ones.
And then there's the purple that are attack and defense. And those are, I think, yes. So the plots are all like usually like special actions that you can play on people. So like the one I always go back to is the Sherlock one, where you can like guess if someone has a certain value, like attack card in their hand, and then so you could say like you have a value 3 attack card in your hand, and if they do, then they have to discard it, something like that. So yeah, you can attack, in which case you play one of your either red attack cards or your, I think it's like purple, obviously because the defense is blue, purple like hybrid attack defense cards face down. You tell the person you're attacking them, and then they can choose to play a defense card, and you flip them over, and then it's basically just the difference between the two is the damage, and then they'll usually have like text effects and things that make it more interesting. The thing I really like about this game is not only is it a really nice, like light, like everything's pre-made, it's super portable. Each product is a whole game. You can buy like 2 packs of characters, like Beowulf and Red Riding Hood, or you can get 4 packs if you want to play with 4 players. The decks are all made. There's no customization or anything. You just pick a character, shuffle their deck, and go. And it's nice and quick. The one thing I really like is the rule that in order to draw a card, you have to move, because it keeps the game moving. You can't just stalemate by hiding in a corner and drawing cards, because that would kind of ruin the game. The game is balanced in such a way that like you have to be moving, and so you can't just like hide in a corner and draw cards. You have to be constantly doing things. And there's a taking time element, which is, I think all the decks are the exact same size, and when you run out, you start just taking damage to your character. But they do a really, really good job of differentiating the characters. Like, they all play very differently, and they all play in such a way that like makes sense to whatever character that they're based around, at least the ones I've played. Which is what's kind of cool about it, is each one is unique.
I think mine's pretty close, but I don't know if it's in this 10, but it's generally like in this area. I know. So,
anything to say? It's unmatched. It's pretty fun. You can get it for cheap, and it's a whole game. And if you buy more of it, great. And if you don't, you have a whole game. So, yeah.
So number 87 for me is going back to Treasure Island. So we already kind of went over it generally. I'll just give a couple of my thoughts about it. I liked the game a lot, and I would like to play it more. I definitely think, for me, it's kind of a game that I wouldn't necessarily want to play over and over a lot, like in a row. Like, I feel like just like playing a game of it, you feel satisfied with it, I guess, kind of like playing a single game rather than playing a lot of them in a row.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah. And I think that's one reason it's a little bit lower. I'm sure it could go up as we play it more. And we've had like a few of those things where you're like, oh, the person like immediately goes to it and finds it the first turn.
I mean, like, technically that's kind of on me, but
yeah.
Also, as Long John Silver, you can just put it anywhere. I also feel like it's really hard for Long John Silver to win.
The only reason I won the very first game we played was because basically I put it next to one of the starting players, and they just like looked right around it and never that specific area. Yeah.
But like the other time we played, and I was Long John Silver, I feel like it's really hard to play Long John Silver, because you basically have to give people information for a bunch of turns. And they can, and like the thing is, all the pirates, they're pirates. They don't like each other, so they don't start next to each other or anything. They start all spread out through the board, so they're all like I mean, like, it takes them a long time to move. But when they have so many turns where you're just stuck in prison and you have to keep feeding them information, almost all of which is true, it becomes a game of hoping that you get cards that basically you can use in such a way. Like, I actually think I did pretty well. I kept giving you guys things that, even though they were true, the information was basically useless. Like, it was like, it has to be in one of these directions, or one of these 2 directions, like on the compass, and I put it like just on the edge or something. Anyway, it's really hard. And then what makes it even harder is you're like, sweet, I'm out of prison. It's the end of the game, and I get to run for my treasure. Well, if everyone's around the area where your treasure is, you have to try to, like, 4D chess them and, like, psych them out, which is what I tried to do to you guys. But I could only do it so long before it was just like, well, eventually just through the law of averages, you're just going to find it if I take too long. And I did psych you guys out, because you started going back the other direction, because I like doubled back and did some weird stuff as I was moving.
Yeah.
But again, you guys had searched basically everywhere in that area, so as soon as I started heading up again, you're like, oh, well, there it is, and you went and searched it. So I was very close, but I feel like it's really hard for which, it's fun. Like, it's a fun challenge. Like, I'm not like, oh, the game is broken, but you do have to give up a lot of information as Long John Silver. Yeah, nothing else to say.
I like
stuff. It was good. It was a good find.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially
a random
random used.
Also, it's got a little box inside the box.
Yes.
Like the insert has like a little. You
I've
lift
got
it
two
up,
games.
and it comes with a little like 3D treasure chest made out of cardboard that you like put tokens in. And you give them to people. It's pretty fun. Yeah, I like it if it's a good niche.
And apparently there's an expansion for it too, which
How would you
haven't seen.
expand
I don't know.
That seems,
I want to know.
Everything doesn't need an expansion.
Yeah.
Unless, maybe I'm wrong and there's some very compelling thing in that expansion, but it just seems like that's the game.
Yeah.
It's not real asymmetric or anything. Like, you have different player abilities, but like everyone has basically the same things. I don't know. Anyway, my number 87 is The Crew. This could be The Crew Mission Deep Sea. I've not played Mission Deep Sea. I've heard it's better in terms of like replayability and things because it actually has cards that allow you to like randomize a mission. But maybe I should explain the game first. The Crew is a cooperative trick-taking game. There are lots of trick-taking games that are competitive. That's mostly what the mechanic makes sense with. But this is cooperative, and the way that works is basically there's a series of, I think, in The Crew, the original The Crew, which is set in space and not in the ocean, there are like 50 missions, I think, and they basically just get progressively harder. But when you start out, you will have a series of things that you're trying to fulfill, like certain suits that need to win and certain things like that. And so the way it works is you can't communicate, and you will basically deal out all the cards to everybody, and they have different suits, so there's 4 suits. I think it's like pink, yellow, green, blue, or red, whatever it's supposed to be. But there's like 4 different colors of suits, numbered like 1 through 9, I think.
So.
I think it's like 1 through 9. And obviously high cards win, and low cards lose, and you need to match the color of the suit if you can. Obviously, if you're completely out of cards of whatever color the suit is, you can't win. But everyone knows what the mission objectives are, but they can't communicate which cards are going to be laid in which order. And then the only trump card that exists is there's 4 numbered 1 through 4 rocket cards, which can be basically played on anything, but only rockets can be played on them. Otherwise, it's like wild. It's been a little bit. But I was surprised by how much I like this game. It's surprisingly challenging to get people to play things in the right order. And it's interesting because everyone knows what the objective is.
Yeah.
And again, there's like little, in the different missions, like as they get harder, there's like different pieces of information that are left out, different like gimmicks and things to make it harder. But yeah, that core thing of like, if there's 4 players, you all need to lay cards down in the right order, and you don't know what cards were dealt to everybody. So like, I may have a really high 9 of red or something, and we need to win. I need to win the red suit, but nobody else necessarily knows that, and so like trying to be careful playing things. And then the one thing I did forget to mention is you can actually put 1 card down, and it has to be the highest of a certain color, the lowest of a certain color, or the only of a certain color.
Yeah.
That's the only piece of information you can share about the cards you have in your hand. Everything else you have to watch what other people do and try to carefully play cards so that whoever needs to win the suit can win the suit. It works really well, and I like it, and I want to play it again. We should play it again. Should play it again.
I think mine's either in this 10 or it's close. It might be in the next one. And yeah, I generally think I like cooperative games a lot.
And
too.
You can get it for like
Especially
$5, like from Target. It's like $10 or $5. It's so cheap, and it's pretty fun. It's pretty fun.
I think it's one of the better trick-taking games that I've played, probably.
Yeah, and it's cooperative, which
Yeah.
is weird. I don't think there's a lot of cooperative trick-taking games. It's not generally that kind of game. But yeah, I think it was a lot of fun. And for that cheap, like, easy.
So number 86 for me is Sonora. We played this, I guess, once, I think. Maybe we didn't play it twice. I don't remember if we did.
As
But
with most
like
things,
in one sitting,
once.
I feel like. Yeah, I think we've only played it once. So this game is basically entirely like a big old thing. I think it's plastic even, yeah. With like 4 regions on it, with like circles for the different other regions basically, and you'll have a player board, and you basically write on the board. Basically, it's a dexterity game.
So it's a flick and right game.
Yes,
instead of
flick
a
and right.
Flip and right game.
Yes. So you'll have a certain number of discs of like for your player color, and you'll basically just be flicking them onto the board, and it'll be oriented. It's basically change orientation over the different rounds.
Yeah.
So that you're not always like shooting for the same
Yeah.
area, and then everybody will take turns flicking their discs onto the board to get the different regions. And then there's like better things there because there's like the smaller circles are better things, and then there's like a section in the middle that's basically wild of any region that you want to choose, and you can knock people's discs out of a region, like if they have because they're higher and lower numbers of discs, you can knock them
Because
into
it's like
different
4
regions.
through 1, right? Or
I
1
think-
through 4.
Something like that.
I think that's
Yeah.
what it is.
And then basically, once you're all done with the, flicking all the discs onto the region, then each player will look at their discs and they'll cross off things on the different regions that are represented with the number of on their disc, and then you develop that. So basically, there's the 4 regions. One of them is like a tree, and like you go down it. One of them's
desert.
shapes. Yeah. So you get the number represents a shape on that one, so then you like can get bigger shapes with the bigger numbers and things like that. And then you're just kind of trying to get as many points as you can based off of those things. So you're gonna want to like go for one region probably, or 2 regions like mainly, and kind of focus on those. Yeah. So I think this is just a little bit lower, just because of the fact that I don't necessarily always love dexterity games. The very few that I played, I don't know if I've even played other ones. Probably,
you played
but
other dexterity games? I'm pretty sure that's the only dexterity game I've ever played.
anyway, so that's the entire genre for me, and maybe I don't like that genre.
It is one of those love or hater things.
Yeah.
I know there's some people who don't like it. I think
It's definitely so fun, and I would play it again.
I think the added element of it's not even really luck. I mean, there is like it's not like rolling a die. Like there's actually like some
Yeah.
skill involved, which I think is fun. It's not just like rolling a die and writing things on your sheet. Like you're actually flicking your discs, and you can move other people's discs, and you can get in those like double point ones. And there's the you have reflex, so you can earn like. Along with the other scoring things, you can earn like the ability to re-flick a disc after you've already flicked it, and then I think you can swap 2 of them or something like that.
Yeah, I think
a
that's-
couple of times you can just like choose 2 and just switch them at the end. So like there's mitigation. So I don't know. I thought it was fun. It definitely is like a point salad-y kind of game where you're just trying to just rack up points as efficiently as possible. But I think the added element of bumping other people's discs and getting the multipliers and stuff is kind of fun. I don't know.
Yeah, I definitely still enjoyed it, and I'd definitely play it again.
It's not
and
on
it could
my-
move up.
I sound like I'm trying to defend it. It's not on my top 100. I like it, but I didn't think it was like quite made the cut. That one was also like it hovered right at the bottom, and I ended up moving things like Pandemic and stuff where I'm like, this is like more of a classic game. Like it's more of a mechanical game. Still like it. I think the only like end right game is Silver and Gold actually on my whole list.
True.
Though I did like what is that? Gangchan Clever was good.
Sure, yeah.
But I think Sonora would still be higher. just because I like the dexterity element of it, because I don't really have any other dexterity games. Pretty sure this is the only dexterity game we've ever played. It's the only one I've ever played, so. What is it, Crokinole? I don't know, there's a couple other, like, the fancy wooden ones that I'd like to try at some point. But I also don't want to pay for them, so. That would be a good thing to probably do at Gen Con. You could probably find somebody's Crokinole board at Gen Con. Be like, hey, can I touch your Crokinole board? Anyway, my number 86?
I think so.
Is Conspiracy Abyss. This is one of the worst marketing games. This has the same problem as Live, Die, Repeat, or Edge of Tomorrow, or whatever you call it, which, what I'm getting to is, if you've ever heard of Abyss, which I don't know is a super, like, popular game either, this is set in the same universe, so it has, like, the same art style and everything, which I like. I think the art is really strong. But instead of it being like Abyss : Conspiracy, which to me makes more sense, it's Conspiracy : Abyss. And Abyss is a whole different game. They share some of the same DNA. There's similar like mechanics. It's almost like Conspiracy is like Abyss super light. It's like boiled and distilled down into like a very simple version of Abyss. But Abyss is like a relatively large, like kind of push your luck game. Conspiracy Abyss is much smaller, and you basically have a deck of square cards that have a bunch of different colors of, like, it's all fish people themed. I guess I'm assuming people know what Abyss is. They're all, like, anthropomorphic fish people, like mermen things. Mermaids, too nice. They're, like, ugly fish people. And so there's different, like, factions that are all vying for power. Like, the red ones are all, like, they look kind of like crab-themed, and they're all, like, military, and there's, like, the green ones, which are all, like bankers, like, they're, the yellow one, I don't know, so there's, like, yellow, blue, purple, green, red, I think there's 5? So, I think there's 5 factions. So you have this deck of them, and you put that out, and when it's your turn, you basically can flip over 1 to 3 cards, and the reason for that is so you flip over 1, you can just take that one, or you can push your luck and flip over another one, and then you have 2 to choose from, and then you can flip over a third one, you have 3 to choose from. So you have more options, but when you, whatever ones you don't take, you can only take 1, whatever ones you don't take are going to be available for other players to take. So the more, which is the same thing that Abyss is kind of, does really well, which is the more options you give yourself, the more options you give the other players. So you have to be careful. Especially if you're turning over cards that you know another person is going to want, because they go into these piles. So each color becomes a pile when you've taken yours, and then those piles actually build up as other people go. So if somebody's really going for purple and you keep taking, flipping 3 cards and not taking purple, well, now there's a nice stack of purple, so when it comes that person's turn, they can take all of those purple cards. Can you take all of them? I don't remember. No, I don't know if you can. Anyway, but what you're doing with those square cards is you're putting them into your, it's called like your console or something like that, and you're basically building a pyramid. So do you start, you start from the wide end of the pyramid and you work your way down to 1 card. And I think it's 13, right? 5, 4, 15? Maybe it's 10. Anyway, you build a pyramid of cards. I think
it's probably 10.
It's probably 10. It's certainly not 13, because that doesn't make any sense. So you start from the wide end of the pyramid, and you're working your way down, and basically what you're trying to do is get a bunch of the same color touching one another in the pyramid. Because you only score at the end of your game your largest contingency of the same color, your largest blob of the same color. So you can get a bunch of blue. You score like 1 point for each blue one that's touching another blue one, basically. There's some other ways you can score points. So some of the characters will have, you basically need keys. And when you get a silver key and a gold key, then you get whatever, thing that they show. It, unlocks it when you have those keys represented. So you're trying to sometimes get those. I don't think it matters where they are. I think you just have to have a second key lower in your pyramid, basically. So that's how you keep track of ones you've already gotten. And then those let you get like special scoring condition cards that let you score different things. Very simple game. Again, it's basically just a deck of square leader cards where whoever builds their 10 first, that's the end of the game. And then the little like extra scoring cards that allow you to do like, you know, unique things. And some of the cards have abilities and stuff. But yeah, it's a very simple game, but I enjoy it as a light card game. I think it's underrated, and I think it's horribly marketed.
Yeah.
The name is really stupid. I always want to call it Abyss Conspiracy, but it's Conspiracy Abyss.
Or like, I feel like I've also heard it just even called like Conspiracy in the Abyss universe.
They
That's
also
just
say that
conspiracy.
too, which is weird because I don't know why. Like, I guess maybe they didn't want to call it Abyss Conspiracy because it could be confused as an expansion for Abyss. But like, Abyss Conspiracy, the card game. I don't know. Anyway,
Yeah.
it's a dumb name.
Definitely want to play it again. I don't remember if it's up higher on the list or if I didn't make it on the list. I don't remember.
I'd play it again. I enjoyed it as like a nice, quick card game because I like the like push your luck thing, and it's like Abyss, but it's much quicker and it's like fewer components. It's a nice like basically pure card game. There are technically a couple tokens, but they're basically just for marking. Like you can mark like whatever faction you have the most cards of or whatever for scoring purposes and stuff. And there's other things you score too. I know it's mainly just like your leaders, but yeah. It's fun. I like it.
So next up we've got number 85, and for me that is Codenames. Codenames is, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people know what Codenames is, but I'll still explain it. It's a 5x5 grid of words that you have laid out in front of you. One player from each team. It's split up into 2 teams, so you have to have an even number. One player from each team will be the Spy Master, and they will have both Spy Masters will have a card in front of them that basically just has the 5x5 grid on it with each of their colors, red and blue, as well as one assassin and pedestrians, basically. So the Spy Masters are simply trying to give clues to the other players on their team as to what the words on the table are. So they want the players on their team to guess the ones that are their color. So if you're on the blue team, you want your team to guess the blue color, and then if they should guess basically the assassin. If any team guesses the assassin, then that team loses. And then pedestrians, I think, give the opposite team like another turn or something. It just ends the turn.
Yeah. But if the blue team picks a card that's actually a red team card, then the red team scores the point, and you're done. So you basically just scored a point for the enemy team.
Yeah, and all you're trying to do is get all of your words laid out, all of them guessed by your team, and that's the whole game.
How do you do that? You left out the most important part.
You see what the people said as clues. I said that they give you clues.
Oh,
and then
okay. Well, the clue is
yes,
one word that's
and
not
a
on the
number,
table, and a number of things it corresponds to. So you're trying to basically chain. So the blue leader, the blue spy master who sees what the cards are, is trying to look at all the blue cards and actually the opponent's cards and make sure that they don't potentially give a clue that sounds like though. That's where the complexity comes in terms of like how difficult it is to give clues. Is you want to be careful you're not giving a clue. Like if you say like blue 3, you want to be careful that the opponent does not have something that your team could misconstrue as something you're trying to indicate with that card. So you're trying to like the clue, if you're allowing like proper nouns, could be like America 3, and you could have like capital, Washington, something else, and so you're trying to get your team to guess those things. And it's a good game. It's somewhere on my list, somewhere in the middle, I think. So we have a ways to go before we get there. It's a very good game. It's a very simple game. It's a very good party game. And you don't even have to buy it. You can actually just play it digitally online, like an official version of it just for free. So, because my team at work has talked about doing that. So,
or you can always just like have somebody look up 25 random words.
You could do that too, I guess, and just generate a layout.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a good, simple game.
Yes, it is. It's a good party game.
Yeah.
I mean, you wouldn't want to. You could technically play with unlimited number of people because it's 2 teams. You don't really want to go much higher than like maybe 4 per team, like including the spy masters, so like 8 total people. Probably wouldn't want to go a lot higher than that because there's not a lot for them to do other than just discuss what one they want to choose. Because you still have to guess 1 card for each number.
It's even what it has on the box is like 2 to 8. So yeah.
I think that's what it says, and I wouldn't.
Yeah.
But technically, you could go unlimited because it's just a team game. Mine is really lame. It's just silver and gold. We already talked about silver and gold. I think everything that needs to be said about silver and gold has been said. Unless you feel the need to say something. Alright, silver and gold.
So moving on to number 84. Mine is Gloomhaven. So, this game is a large campaign game. Very large. It's quite expensive as well, or at least originally was.
£30. That's still over $100.
Yeah.
It's like $140 or something. It's
like $200.
no miniatures or anything. Well, I guess technically there are miniatures for the characters, but
anyway, so Gloomhaven, basically the entire game, you have a deck of cards based off of the character you choose. So I believe there's like 5 starting characters you can choose from, and it goes up to like 4 players. So, and it's a campaign game, so you have a bunch of different scenarios that you can go to. And you slowly like build out your map with. You can get removable stickers or the non-removable stickers, and you like place them on the map to show where you've unlocked. And you can. There's like a story and there's side quests you can go on, so like that kind of thing. It's kind of like a more RPG styled campaign game. Mm-hmm. It's like if you had a board game version of an RPG. Mm-hmm. And yeah, basically each of the scenarios is like a procedurally generated map. So you put out the tiles, and you fight the monsters inside, and you play 2 cards per round. And the main mechanic of the initiative, where you choose one of your cards to represent your initiative, and then whoever's lowest out of the total initiative, including the enemies, goes first. And you play a top half and a bottom half of each of one of your cards, and you have to play one of each. So out of your 2 cards, you have to play a top half and a bottom half. It doesn't matter which one you play as top half and bottom half, but it has to be one of each. And yeah, you fight the monsters.
The only thing I would note is your entire deck is in your hand, so each character, it's like your life basically. You have hit points, but when you if you can die from running out of hit points, or you can die if you run out of cards. You're basically exhausted and you're out. And there are ways to recover those cards. Some cards are like lost, it's called, where they're like perma-gone. There's only like one character that I'm aware of that can get cards that are lost back, so they're basically perma-gone, but then a lot of them get discarded, and then you can rest as your turn and get some cards back. So it's I think the biggest lie of Gloomhaven is, like you said, it's a very it's kind of an RPG style. It's like playing an actual board game version of an RPG. But in terms of combat, it's not at all how those work, because RPGs are very random. You're just rolling dice. There are random elements. It's not purely deterministic, but it is Gloomhaven is much more of a puzzle game than it is an RPG style in terms of combat. In terms of story, unlocking things, going around, upgrading your characters, all that stuff is very RPG. You get XP and you upgrade your characters and you buy new items and equipment. But the combat and the movement and everything is very procedural, and you have to be very, very careful. You cannot waste anything. And then all the randomness for that basically comes out of what's called a modifier deck. So when you attack something, you draw a card off of that. And there's +1, -1, -2, ×2, and then null, which is just your whole attack is wasted. But yeah, no, it's fun. It's higher up on my list. I do not think this is the greatest game of all time. I do not think it should be BGG number 1. It has been for a very long time. I'm curious to see where Frosthaven lands, because frankly, I'm going to be offended if it's number 2. And then Draws the Line is still within the top 5, I think, isn't it? I don't know. It's ridiculous. There, it's a good game. It's definitely not for everybody, for sure. I would not recommend it to most people. I think there's a lot of people, I know people I work with who are not huge board gamers, but they got excited because they're really big into D&D and then bought this giant box, and then they're like, I don't know what to do with it. So I will say, if you're not sure, buy Jaws of the Lion. You can get it for like $30-$40. And it's basically like, I think it's like 20 scenarios as opposed to like over 100, which is what Gloomhaven has. But it actually goes through the introductory process. I've played like the first 5 or so of Jaws of the Lion. And it takes you through and it adds mechanics as you go. It doesn't just dump you into the deep end like Gloomhaven does. Gloomhaven also does not have the greatest rulebook. Jaws of the Lion is a bit better. And again, it's better because it like introduces a new mechanic each of the first 5 scenarios. It doesn't just throw everything at you at once. There's also, it's a lot smaller box. Like Jaws of the Lion is like a good size. There's still a lot of content in it, and there's still a lot of stuff, but it's like a nice compact, and like I said, I think it's like 20 or 25 scenarios. And it's got unique characters, so if you have Gloomhaven, you can still get Jaws of the Lion, and you can steal the characters from it. Because people really like Hatchet, and I see why, because I've been playing him, and he's a lot of fun. You have like axes that you can throw at people, and then you can like go get them back, like, throw them at people, and he does a lot of damage. Anyway, yeah, the progression stuff is good in Gloomhaven. I like that. The things I don't like are the admin side of things. It is a pain to admin that game, which you don't have to do. I get to do that. But keeping track of like what's unlocked. Certain things you can unlock certain things, but then they have certain like prerequisites. Like you must have this achievement and that achievement and have done this mission in order to go to this mission. And so keeping track of all that stuff is a pain. What else is a pain? There are other things. I just completely blanked. Keeping track of prerequisites. Oh, the actual storylines. I don't know how people do it without downloading. Like someone has mapped out like what scenarios kind of like connect and like logically make sense to each other. I don't know how you do that because in the basic game you have this spiral bound book of all the scenarios, and they'll just say like what leads into the next one. But unless you like remember that, go back to that page and go, oh, we want to continue this storyline. It doesn't really work because you like unlock like 3 things from completing one scenario, 3 new locations. What are you gonna like remember the last 3 locations you unlocked and then like flip to those and be like, oh, this one connects to that one. Okay, so we'll go to that one then. It just like I need the visual of like the flow chart, basically. It's not a flow chart, but a chart basically that shows like. You start here. This is scenario 1. Scenario 1 branches off 3 different ways, and then from there you can, if you want to like actually kind of follow a quest line. And then the other thing I'll say is the writing is not very good.
Yeah.
It's very basic. I can appreciate that there are, they try to have like unique fantasy races that's not just dwarves and elves. There are still humans, which is weird to me. I don't know why, but whatever. So I like that, and I like the art is nice, the aesthetic. I like the artist. I like the way it looks. It has its own unique style. But as far as the story goes, it's very fantasy tropey. Very tropey. It's very like, there's an evil sorcerer. Go kill the evil sorcerer. He's enslaving all the townsfolk. And so that's why. I think it's interesting that this is higher than Tainted Grail. Because Tainted Grail has a great story and
definitely
not as great of
Grail
gameplay.
We need to actually play Tainted Grail now.
Oh.
And Gloomhaven now. That hasn't happened in a long time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Gloomhaven. What was mine? Oh yeah, I was doing too much whinging. Did you have anything else to say? So mine is A Feast for Odin, which may be kind of controversial. I don't know. I think this has kind of died down. For a while, this was like the craze was A Feast for Odin. I like Uwe games. I have quite a few other ones. At least one other one. No, I think there's at least 2. Up quite a bit higher. Caverna. Spoilers. I'm trying to think of like... Oh, Le Havre is definitely higher too. Anyway, I do not own A Feast for Odin. I liked A Feast for Odin when I played it. The thing I will say, it has some cool things going for it. It has some unique things going for it. So basically it's like a lot of Uwe games, Uwe Rosenberg, it is a worker placement game. So you have like this giant board in the middle of the table that has like 70 action spaces, and some of them are locked behind like how many like characters you have unlocked, and some of them are locked behind like you have to spend resources to do them. I think it's been a while since I played this, but I know they're not all available. So you have all these action spaces, and they let you do all sorts of different things. So you have like on your main board, you have like a grid of squares. And that's basically where your treasure will go. So you can go on raids, because it's Viking themed. So you can, a feast for Odin. So you can go on raids, and then you can bring back these polyomino, like Tetris pieces, and place those into your board that you have, and they cover up basically negative points. So I think everything pretty much is negative points at the beginning. You start with like negative 50 points at the beginning of the game, which is interesting. I kind of like it. And you're placing these treasure tiles around, and since they're different weird shapes, and they're very weird shapes, they do not interlock easily. You're going to have some gaps, which you can fill in with other things. You can there's like animals that you can breed. You can get food, because you have to feed a feast for Odin. You have to feed your guys every like round or so. It's not every round, but there's like points where you have to feed them, and as you get more of them, you get more workers, then you have to feed them more, and you can buy islands, like you can explore islands that also are worth negative points when you get them, but you can also cover those. I feel like I'm forgetting what else. There's a lot, and this is mostly why this game is so low. I'd like to play it again, but not only is there like mechanic overload. I like the polyomino stuff, but there's just so much stuff going on. You also have to diversify. You cannot go for like one strategy. I lost miserably because I went for like one thing, and I did really well at that one thing, but you have to get like all the things. I also went for breeding animals, which is apparently basically broken and not very good, and then the expansion, I believe, kind of fixes some of that. That's what I've heard, which I'd like to try. But my biggest complaint is, like I said, just overload of mechanics and symbols, and there's just... It feels like it maybe should have been like 2 games worth of stuff. There's a lot in that box, and the box is like $100. And then the teaching aspect. I didn't have to teach this game. I didn't own it. But the board, quite literally, I think, has like 70 action spaces on it.
That's a lot, yeah.
They're not all available, like I said, from the beginning of the game. But even from the beginning of the game, I think you have like 10, 20 choices. You have a lot of choices. And it's easy to AP, analysis paralysis. It's easy to just be like, whatever, do that one. Because there's just so much iconography and things. And the iconography is not bad, but there's just so much stuff that it just becomes very overwhelming. I think if you played it a lot, you wouldn't have that problem, but we, played it the one time. So I want to play it again. It can move up. I'd like to get a copy if I can get one for not $100. Like $50 maybe would be cool. But yeah, I don't know. Is it on your list?
I don't know if it is.
Oh,
it might be,
interesting.
or it might not be. I don't know.
Anything to say?
There's definitely way too much stuff going on. Yeah.
Yeah,
I remember that for sure.
It was so busy, and like it shares a lot of DNA with something like Caverna, and having just recently played that again, I was like, I like this so much more, because it's there's still a lot going on in Caverna even, but it's more straightforward. Like you basically have the two halves of your board, literally, which is farming and mining. And you can do both. You can do one. You can do the other. And that's like what you're going for. And yes, there's a lot of action spaces, but they're all pretty simple. It's basically go here, get resources. And you're getting resources to buy stuff and to go on adventures with your dwarves. Yeah. So in that regard, it's a lot more streamlined. Like when I reread the rules and then when I taught it to you, I was like, this is way easier than I remember it. Granted, like I've had Caverna for a really long time, so we've played a lot more games, but it has that same, like, the shared board where you're taking actions, just like Feast for Odin has. Obviously, it doesn't have the polyomino stuff. But it just, like, other than a few, like, little finicky things, like, with where animals can be placed and, like, the quantities, which even that's not too bad. It's just a much more streamlined experience, but it gives me kind of the same experience, if that makes sense, so.
Feast for Odin just, like, adds way too much stuff on, like... It certainly isn't
There's
like
so many
the
pieces.
same, but like it really does just like add a lot of stuff onto Caverna. Yeah.
There's
makes
so
sense.
many pieces that there's like literally plastic trays that come with the game to put all the pieces in because it would be a nightmare to sort otherwise. Again, I like the polyomino stuff, and Caverna does not have that. I like polyomino, like the placing in a grid and trying to figure out the most efficient way to do that. And it's cool that it's pieces of treasure. That kind of makes sense. It's like your hoard. I don't know if it really makes sense. I don't know if it's really that thematic. But yeah, just the sheer amount of like overhead in teaching it, in remembering it, in just the amount of options you have. I think Caverna is just like a lighter version, and Caverna's not a light game.
Yeah.
So Caverna is much higher. I also like Le Havre, but we'll get there eventually. So.
So number 83 for me is Coup. So this is basically a game. It's like an entire deck of cards, basically, and you get. I believe you start with the two player cards. That each card has its own ability. There's like multiple copies of each of them, but they each generally have their own ability, and they.
Do I already have Coup? You can go. Sorry.
So basically, whatever two cards you have in front of you are what abilities you have, but when you're playing, taking your turn, you can use any of the abilities of any of the cards, and there's a little like reference sheet on the side to tell you all the abilities. You can use any of the abilities on any of the cards, but any player can call you out on bluffing on those cards. So like, there's one player that can take 3 coins from the supply.
That's the one
Yeah.
everybody uses.
That's the main one that you would
Because normally you
bluff
can only
with.
take, what is it, 1 coin or 2
I
coins?
think you can take 2 coins, maybe.
I don't know. It's
Something like that. I
It's
don't know,
very
yeah.
little,
It's-
so
yeah.
everyone lies about what is it?
The Duke,
The
I
Duke,
think.
yeah.
So you can take 3 coins if you have the Duke, or you can lie about having the Duke and still take 3 coins. But if somebody should call your bluff on it, then you have to like
to reveal
yeah, you
your
have to reveal
roll.
your
And if,
roll.
if you were lying, then you lose a life basically.
And if you're not lying,
is it 2 cards
and
you
you
get for your
reveal the-
life or whatever.
Yeah,
you
you-
get
I
like
think you
2
start with
face
2
down
of them,
cards
yeah.
for your life.
And then if you're not lying about it, and somebody calls your bluff on it, then you discard the card and draw a new card to
Right,
replace it.
You've revealed your hidden identity.
Because you know what it is.
basically,
Yeah. And then basically you're trying to be the last one standing with both your, not necessarily both your cards, but have your cards and nobody else having any cards.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, because your cards represent your life. So like, as soon as somebody does call your bluff, then you have to discard whatever card it is, like one of your 2 cards. And then there's like things with there's like the assassins who if you have an assassin, you can like choose to attack one of another player's cards, and then the Contessa like counters the assassins basically. So like, if you have the Contessa, then they have to lose a card.
Yeah, it like reflects the
And, like,
diamond.
yeah.
back, yeah.
And there's just like a whole lot of intrigue with like the whole bluffing thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very simple game, and I think that's why it's lower. But I still enjoy it nonetheless, and just like the bluffing wise, I think for a bluffing game, I actually would probably prefer Sheriff of Nottingham. I think I have it probably higher.
Yeah. Ooh, I don't know.
I don't know.
I know Coup didn't make my list. That was also barely
Yeah.
because there's a lot of the, like I said, like Sonora. There's a lot of those games that I like, but there was just other games that I went. I think I like this game a little bit better.
Yeah.
Coup is very fun. I've played a lot of Coup because it's one of those games that's like maybe 20 minutes, 10, 20 minutes. It depends on
Yeah,
how,
so
like
you
once
play
you've
multiple
played
games
it, like you can
usually,
get really
yeah.
fast because you only have like 2 life. It's not really any way to get more life, I don't think.
Yeah, I don't think so.
And yes, there's player elimination, but the game is so short that like it doesn't matter, and it's pretty fun to watch. Like the only thing is sometimes people can get stuff in like a death battle where they keep fighting each other. But even then, like the game is like will eventually end. It's not something like Bang where you can just get kind of stuck in a loop for a while. But no, yeah, it's a good game. Didn't quite make my list, but it's a good like camping game, travel game because it's again super cheap.
And
It's like
that
10.
big.
It's like 20 cards
Yeah.
and some coins, and that's it. And it's a good time. Lots of intrigue, lots of metagaming. Oh, the other thing I would say is you can get stuck in situations where you literally cannot win. which is one slight downside. Like just due to unlucky draws, you can just get in a situation where if it's like 1v1, there's literally nothing you can do. They play an assassin, you're dead. They play an assassin, you're dead.
I mean,
Like,
it's how it's going forward, but
yeah, it just there are unwinnable situations, and it works again because it's not a 3-hour game. It's a 20-minute game. You can have those unwinnable situations. You go, oh damn, I lost, and you reshuffle and play again. But you can straight up just get in unwinnable situations where you're like through no fault of your own, through no mistakes that you made, you could just kind of lose. So that would be the only thing I would say. But 10-20 minutes. Mine, we have already talked about, so this is another crossover, which is Trickerion. So slightly higher, but not a lot higher, because was that last video? Yeah, it was last video, because, yeah. So slightly higher. Once again, not to sound like a broken record, this one could go higher. I liked it. It definitely was a lot more punishing than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
You beat me by a lot of points. But like everything, the game is not. The game is long, but it's not long in terms of like you don't have a lot of rounds. I think it's like 6 or 8 or something rounds. Like it's a limited number of rounds. The game won't just go on forever, which is good. I like that in a game. But my one complaint with that is that everything you do is like very important to your strategy. It felt like, and maybe this is just me, it felt like if you make one mistake, 1 or 2 mistakes, like you're gonna lose by a landslide. There seems to be kind of that snowballing effect because you start out with like no resources or anything. You start out with, you start with like one trick that you can perform, and it's worth like very few points. But once you get up to those like tier 2 and especially the tier 3 tricks, if you can like compound those with your abilities, there's a lot of like, you really have to like synergize what you're doing, or you're just gonna lose. And I did not. So I want to play it again. I don't just dislike it because. Or not dislike it, obviously it's on the list, but I don't like it less because I lost, but I definitely felt like, oh wow, this was a lot more like, everything you do is super important than I thought it was, and the game was over faster, and maybe that's because we played it with 2 players a little bit, so I think I would like to, those Euro-style games, usually you don't want to play with like less than 3, like 3 or 4 is usually like the sweet spot, which I think maybe could have been an issue. We've talked about that with like Lorenzo Il Magnifico and stuff like that.
There's a lot of games.
It was good, but I've only played it at 2, and I'd like to play it with maybe more.
There's plenty of games that I would definitely change around probably if we played it with more than 2. I'm sure.
Yeah, well, I think it would just change the dynamic a lot. So it was fun. I thought it was pretty thematic for a Euro game. I mean, I wouldn't call it the most thematic game, but I thought it represents the theme pretty well of like you're learning new magic tricks, and then you're going and performing those magic tricks, and you're trying to impress an audience. Like the score track is like actually like audience seats in a theater, which is kind of cool. I like that. And it's a very pretty game. It looks very nice. But it's not my favorite Mind Clash game. I've only played 2 of them. The other one is higher on my list, and it's also a big ass box. Trickerion.
Number 82 for me is another crossover game. We've got The Crew, so we've already talked about this game once again. It's a good trick-taking game in general, I think, to me. Maybe I don't know. Either way, the cooperative aspect of it really adds to it.
You sound really sure.
The cooperative aspect of it is really what like sells the game, I guess, and puts it a little bit higher on the list. Yeah.
Alright, my A2 is Brass Birmingham. Specifically Birmingham. I've not played Lancashire, but it seems like it's basically the same with some like slightly tweaked rules. And Lancashire is basically the original Brass, like 1-for-1, I think, and then Birmingham has some like slight changes that they were just like, oh, let's make another version, but they're basically the same game. Did we have this one yet on your list? Is it higher? Is it lower?
I don't think I maybe have it on my list.
Oh, I maybe shouldn't have put it on my list. Much like Trickerion, well, I guess I should explain it. I'm gonna have a hard time explaining this one. You got a board. You're set in like the Industrial Revolution. you have your like player board that has a whole bunch of different like factories and breweries and what are all like the resources?
Yeah, there's like
It's all of the
coal
things.
mines, iron mines.
Yeah,
there's
there's
like
coal,
there's all kinds
iron,
of stuff.
breweries, textiles. I think is one
Yeah,
of
this
them.
is like various different things. Like it's literally
Buildings.
pretty much
They're
everything.
different buildings, and so you start with a bunch of them that you're basically trying to get off your board and onto the main board, which has a whole bunch of different cities that are in like districts and things that are all connected, and I think it's going to be a great testament to the fact that this game is. I don't remember anything about it, is that I really can't explain to you the intricacies of how that works. I know you have cards, and you use those cards. Yeah. They have
so
like the
they
different
represent
districts.
the cities, and then there's also there's like breweries on the side, basically.
Yeah,
or, like,
and you're trying to
things.
use those in order to play your pieces onto the
and you basically
board.
you're trying to get resources to play
to buy
buildings,
the
which give you more resources to build more buildings, basically. And
Basically.
buildings also give you points.
And
to
you
some
get
extent.
points from connecting, but certain things have to be connected, like with routes, like train tracks and stuff.
Yeah, you have to build the routes over time.
Or no, you start with boats, right?
Yeah,
and then the second phase of the game is like a few years later when trains are things. So then you get trains that also connect things.
And I think they're like it's basically just a way of making it more expensive in like the later rounds. So that it's like
Yep.
Yeah.
Again, I was okay with it. I think we played it with 2 people.
Yeah, this is definitely one I want to play with more.
It may help because there were some weird changes for 2 players.
Yeah. It basically just like cuts the map apart.
Yeah,
so, like,
it was
small
weird.
Portion of the map, and, yeah.
I will say there's also like I don't know if it was just me. I felt like the rules were really finicky. Like there's all sorts of like, oh, will you play a card to place a tile? Oh, but you can't place there. And you can't place there unless it's connected to this. And if there's not a coal plant three spaces down the street, then you can't place there. And it was
because
making it sound
the breweries basically could be used like anywhere, and then like the irons you have to be
there's all sorts of weird like supply line
coals
things.
You can use like other places if it's in a certain.
And I think
distance,
we kept messing things up, and then we got to the end of the game,
at least
and we
realized probably too like it's a game that you have to learn, and then you actually have to play it. Probably, I think.
Sure.
Maybe. I don't know.
I like to think that you shouldn't have to do that. It is very heavy. Again, it could move up. I didn't hate it. It's on the list. I thought it was interesting, and it does some like unique things. It's not just like a worker placement. There's a lot of worker placements. Like most Euros are worker placements. It was a Euro, but it has some like different stuff. The card play stuff was interesting, and like blocking people and connecting things and trying to score points was interesting. But I would like to play it with more people because we've only played it 2-player and once. So we should probably play that again at some point. But yeah, I definitely can see why people don't like it.
Yeah, for sure.
I also don't know that it's like the 20th greatest game. Or no, isn't it? No, it's in the top 10, isn't it?
Might
Of all
be,
time? Yeah. BGG is
high.
weird. Again, I don't think it's bad, and it should probably be somewhere in the top 100, maybe. Obviously, there's taste and whatever, but like, it's like Gloomhaven. I like it. I don't know if it's the best game of all time. I don't know if it's a perfect game. And I don't. I do know it. It's not. It has issues, and it's not for everybody. At least, actually, no. Kingdom Death is on the top 100 too. I don't understand why people like pick the most like niche and expensive games. And they're like, "This is the greatest game of all time because it's expensive." Maybe that is why. I feel bad because I spent $500 on this, so it must be good. Anyway.
Alright, so we're on to the last one of this video, number 81. So this one for me is Android Netrunner. So,
Wow.
This is a
Hurtful.
Fantasy Flight card game. Is it a living card game? I don't think so, is it?
I
Either
don't
way, it doesn't
really know
matter.
what that
The
means.
definition- yeah, I don't know what the definition of a living card game is.
Like the definition is loose.
Either way.
Anyway.
Fantasy Flight
It's
card
not
game.
a CCG, it's a collectible, or it's a TCG.
No, that's trading.
Or, yeah, no.
It-
Then maybe it is a living card. I don't know.
Is Living
See,
card game
'cause-
where you just like get packs that are like pre-set? Is that what the difference is?
I think it's supposed to have something to do with like story, but like Lord of the Rings doesn't really have like. I mean, I guess it kind of does. Anyway, it's definitely not a. It has the packs you buy. Like, well,
Yeah.
you can't buy them anymore. Have like specific cards, and that's not random. So it's not a CCG or a TCG. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah. So, Android Netrunner is a Fantasy Flight card game, and it's basically asymmetric in that one player plays as a corporation and the other player plays as what's called a runner.
Hacker.
And the hacker. So the runner is attempting to access different points of data from the corporation. So the corporation will have set out various servers
Their
access
cards.
points.
Yeah.
So like they'll have their main server card, or not server card, their main like corporation card. And then they'll have the R&D department and the archives, yes, which is a draw on the discard pile. So once again, the terminology of Internet Runner is a little bit confusing, but basically a draw on discard pile. And then you'll have like slots to put your remote servers, which are cards that you'll play throughout the game. So the corporation is attempting to defend their servers from the runner, and the runner is basically trying to build up their abilities, mainly icebreakers, in order to break the ice, which is what the corporation plays to defend their servers.
Their firewalls on their
Yeah.
server. Yeah.
So like, there's different keywords on the ice in that, so that the icebreakers like affect different types of the ice. And then there's like upgrade cards and other things like that. And basically the entire game is the corporation is trying to put points on their agendas that they have in the servers. And the runner is trying to go for those agendas,
Find the
trying to guess
agendas.
which ones are the agendas, and trying to take them. And the agendas have a specific
Whoever gets
number of
to a total
points,
of
and
7
whatever is,
wins.
whoever gets to 7. Yeah, this is a really good card game.
Apparently, it's not.
It's not my favorite card game. I certainly, at the very least, the other two, I mean, there's more than two, but the main two other Fantasy Flight card games that I could think of.
Nobody cares
Arkham
about
Horror,
the Indiana Jones card game.
and Lord of the Rings.
or what is the
Are
5
definitely,
rings
like,
or whatever?
higher. Yeah.
Nobody cares about that. I remember that came out, and then like immediately after, I started seeing it everywhere in discount bins, and I was like, well, I guess I'm not getting into that game. Sorry.
Anyway, yeah, at the very least, compared to Arkham Horror and Lord of the Rings, I definitely enjoyed those two a lot more. I think as far as, like, you don't hear, at least I haven't heard of many asymmetric card games.
Yeah.
So it kind of has its own, like, spot in that. So, and I think it fulfills that very well. I don't know. It's just not necessarily my favorite card game overall. And, yeah, I think... I guess it can move up just because of the fact that the terminology is so weird.
Yeah.
Like, just like when you play it the first time, you're like, why on earth does it have all of this weird terminology?
Yeah. Much like
yeah.
brass, it's hard to learn.
Yeah.
I think once you get over that hurdle, it's not really so bad. Like it's not that like we have a whole video. It was one of the last videos we did. Netrunner and Nisi, which is like because I guess Netrunner is out of print. The rights were basically lost. Fantasy Flight no longer has the rights to like the world. They own the game, but they don't have any of like the cyberpunk world that it's set in anymore. So I think it's Wizards of the Coast. So a fan project was created basically to just make more content from the game because there is a very like loyal fan base that's still really into it. Obviously, if they can make and sell their own packs of like new cards that haven't existed before. I agree. I think obviously like of the card games, the theme is not like Lord of the Rings and Arkham, Lovecraft. Yeah. Much cooler themes for me. Mm-hmm. I think mechanically it's a very good game.
Yeah.
I think, like you said, I've not seen a lot of asymmetric card games. I think once you learn it, it's really not that like heavy, and there are certain elements of it that are actually quite like simple. But it's so hard to learn. I mean, we watched videos. I read the rule book. I read the rule book again. Like it's for some reason I don't know what it is because I don't even know that the rule book is horrible. It's not even the worst rule book I've ever read. It's just something about the terminology and the fact that you're basically playing two entirely separate games. Like both, corporation is defending, runner is attacking. Like that's how you have to think about it. Is one side is playing completely defense and trying to score their agendas before the other person can come steal them, basically. So I don't know. I think it's better than you say. This is your list.
I think it'll definitely move up just because of the fact that we've played it a couple of times.
I was gonna say I think we should.
Just
I think
the
we
first
should play
time we played it. Yeah, I don't know. Just now that we've played it a couple.
I like how simple the deck building is. For some reason, there's like a page of rules. I think I mentioned this in the net, like a whole like big page of rules. It basically boils down to you have to have at least this many cards, and you can have up to this many basically like pips, like the different like from other factions. Super simple. So you can have like 2 or 3 cards from other factions, and you have to have at least this many cards. You can have more. And that's basically it. So I will say I appreciate how simple the deck building rules are because it makes it really easy for us to just like throw together a deck and play and call it good. Really like the Nisi stuff. I think they're doing some really cool work. It's some of the best like for free work that like just because we like the game work that I've ever seen, which is cool. But yeah, it's definitely higher for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's a good game. I forgot what my game is. Let's see if I can think of it. No, I'm just gonna cheat. Oh yeah, okay. I'll not cut that out. But so mine is Twilight Struggle, which is not to be confused with Twilight Imperium. Twilight Struggle is a 2-player head-to-head game. Basically, it's set in the Cold War, so it's the United States and Russia basically trying to influence the world. So the board is like a map with all the different countries of the world, and you have like they start like with whatever influence Russia and communist and democratic influence there is, and then you're basically playing cards. So it's kind of it's a card driven game where you're playing cards which are different historical events. You have like Sputnik. There's like an arms race one, but they're all different historical events. I think they all have like a year and a date on them. And you're playing those to basically influence the different areas of the board, and the big one being East and West Germany, for obvious reasons. Very thematic. It's basically the Civil War in a box. It's not like a war game. It's very much like a Civil War, Cold War. It's not the first time I've done that. A Cold War in a box. Should I just like ADR cold when I say civil? Anyway, and where you're basically, you're playing cards and you're trying to influence different things. This is a weird one for me because I do not like GMT games. I think it is absolute robbery. Like people complain about how overpriced like CMON is. With how they're giant, excuses to have like 50 miniatures in a game that like basically is just rolling dice. And don't get me wrong, I like some of the CMON games. I've bought some of them. I'm not saying all of them, but they tend to have really bloated Kickstarters where like the highest pledge tier is like $500 for everything, which is just ridiculous, and then like another $100 in shipping. It's just ridiculous. But I think GMT has the opposite problem, where somehow GMT is allowed to get away with basically making cardboard games with no production value, and and charging like $80 for them, and no one says anything about it. Not nearly as much as people complain about like CMON, and I'm sure they have good games. I know there's a few of them like I've wanted to play. Twilight Struggle is the only one I've ever bought. But even the copy of Twilight Struggle I have is called the Deluxe Edition, and it is thin cardboard chits for everything, and some very like cheap cards and a board. That's the whole game, and I believe the game retails for like $70. Component wise, and not even component. also the graphic design is very basic. It's beige. They all GMT games look the same. They look cheap, and yeah, it works, and the game works. But like, and like all the cards, all the different events have like newspaper clippings for like the images or like pictures of like the characters and the historical figures in black and white. But they're all just actual pictures and things. Like there's no art. Like they didn't pay an artist for any of this. So I have a really hard time like liking their games because of how cheap they are. Despite how expensive they are in terms of price tag, component-wise, they're so cheap. And they all look like that, and I don't know why people don't have more of a fuss about it. But Twilight Struggle is very fun. It's a good 2-player game. I think it was on our 2-player game list when we did it. Mine, or maybe it was Bradley's, actually. Because Bradley apparently liked it a lot more than I thought he did, because I whooped his ass. But, the other thing I forgot to mention is there are, like, tracks. So there's, like, Space Race, obviously, because it's the Civil War, the Cold War. So there's, like, the Space Race, which you can, like, both compete to try to get up on that. There's DEF CON status, and if it goes all the way to 1 is Cock Pistol, right? I always get this confused. Yeah, it's 1. I think 1 is the highest DEF CON status. Nuclear War Imminent is what Cock Pistol means. I can't remember what number it is. I believe it's 1. It's going to be embarrassing if it's not, because I already said Civil War. That will just, like, end the game. I think everybody loses if nuclear war breaks out. I'm pretty sure. So, I mean, that's sort of what the Cold War was about, was mutually assured destruction. And then there's, what else? The victory points are a tug of war. So you start in the middle, or you start, you both start, like, out, like, 20 points or something out. And what you have to do is move your disc, you, like, pull the... It's not a tug of war. That's not really the right thing either. But or is it? I think, yeah, when you score points, your opponent loses them. So you're like you're pushing closer to victory, and you're pushing them farther away, and you're trying to like get to the middle. I think. I don't know. I know that the track is like it meets in the middle. I haven't played it in a while. I would like to play this one again. I think it's hard because it's 2 players and it's like really heavy for a 2-player game. But I know you've mentioned you want to play it, so maybe we can play it sometime. And maybe next year we'll have moved up, or maybe it'll stay where it is, or move down. Thus is time.
Yeah, I know I have not played it in forever, and I don't think it ended up on the list just because of that.
That's fair, yeah.
Yeah. I'd play it again.
Yeah, Bradley apparently liked it. I wasn't sure if he liked it, because it is not. She ain't a looker.
Yeah.
I know you can buy like from Board Game Geek. You can get like the plastic tokens for everything, which is much nicer. I feel like that would be a lot nicer because everything is just thin cardboard. Not okay. Well then, that is. I think that wraps part 2, 90 through 81. Of the top 100 for 2022. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you strongly agree or strongly disagree, or frankly if you feel any which way, leave a comment down below. It really helps the algorithm, and we're interested to hear what games would be on your top 100. Maybe what games you feel we're wrong about. Sam was almost going to put Mage Knight down here, like a heathen. But yeah, like and subscribe, and we will see you next time.